And thank you, Kaz. It is certainly wonderful to see you all. Our session that we just had was wonderful with Sandy Duckworth. I will send out some notes after the meeting tonight and some attachments of things that Sandy shared with us. It was terrific. And this next session, we're going to take a different view on foundation. Instead of talking about your actual club committees and your club foundation chair position and your responsibility, we're going to talk club or foundation basics with Lori Menzel. Lori is the major gift, let me say it right, major gift officer for Zone 33 and is also a member of the Rotary E-Club for Peace Builders, correct? Yes, and she's an acting board member on that for that club as well. Very engaged with the district. And when I talked earlier about our list of foundation experts in this district and how blessed we are, Lori's right up there with the entire list I gave you earlier. And she is another resource that you certainly can reach out to at any time for anything foundation and help answer anything you may have. So I look forward to this next hour or so with us. And in the middle, we will stop and do our social activity that we have been doing at every session and then finish up by 7:45. So with that, Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you start. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, it's terrific to be with all of you this evening. Thank you for taking the time to come and hear about something near and dear to myself, is the Rotary Foundation. So I am going to share my screen and get us started. Come on. How about the slideshow? There we go. All right. Sheila, can you just let me know that you can see my screen?
Yes, yes, I can. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. All right. So tonight we are going to go into the Rotary Foundation. I like to call it your Rotary Foundation. And Sandy has shared with you some information. I'm going to kind of take a deeper dive into different parts of the foundation. Remember that it takes time to learn all of it. So I'm a big proponent of yoga. Take a big yoga breath, take in what you can, and then just keep learning. You mentioned the reference guide, which is terrific. It sits on my desk all the time. I'm always opening it up to look at it. So just remember that as we go through all the information tonight. I will try to take some breaks at certain sections and allow for questions. And then someone can cue me, Sheila or Kaz, to let me know when it's time to take a break for your social. So the first thing I really like to talk about when I start talking about the Rotary Foundation really is our mission, kind of why are we here? If you know Simon Sinek, who I love, one of his famous books is all about the why. And why are we here? Why is the Rotary Foundation here? You can see that I've underlined helps Rotarians. That's the reason why the Rotary Foundation exists. We're here to help you and your club members, the district, the zone, help Rotarians achieve all of this incredible work you're doing. And I bring up the mission statement as well, because back in July of 2021, the trustees updated the mission statement, and you'll notice toward the bottom there, it says improving the environment, because we added our 7th area of focus. And so they wanted to put that in there to reflect that change. So I always go back to the mission statement when working on things, and also just to remind me why it is that the foundation is here. I also think about trust. When I think about charitable giving, I think trust is really important. Do you trust the charities that you give your hard-earned dollars to? Do you trust them to be effective and efficient and transparent and accountable? I certainly do, and I'm a Rotarian myself as well. That's one of the reasons why the Rotary Foundation has earned the 4-star Charity Navigator rating for the 14th year in a row, which is quite an accomplishment. And I'm quite proud of that. And I challenge you, go out to Charity Navigator and look around in it and put in the Rotary Foundation and see just exactly why we've earned that 4-star rating for so many years in a row. And when you do that, look at the ones that we're in company with, because we're in really great company. And as the years go on, but consecutively, the list gets smaller. So I'm just really proud, and that just shows that, again, the transparency, the accountability, the efficiency of the way the Rotary Foundation is run. And also, as you see on the screen, 91%. 91% of the funds that you give are spent directly on programs. That is a phenomenal amount. We hover right around 90, 91, 92. It doesn't vary a whole lot. But it's something also to be very proud of, to know that you're making this huge impact when you do give to the Rotary Foundation. The other day when I was sitting on a presentation with another Rotarian who was talking about the Rotary Foundation, he said, you know what, we're a really big deal. And I thought, you know what, we are a really big deal. I think I'm immersed in it every day, all the time, and I don't always think about it in those terms. But last year, we raised, during the middle of the pandemic, it doesn't surprise me at all how generous Rotarians are, but over 440 million was raised by Rotarians. I mean, that is just incredible, especially during a pandemic. And so I want to show you just a short video.
Raindrops fall from the sky. They may be small, but together they make a mighty ocean. In the same way, your commitment to doing good in the world enables the Rotary Foundation to fund the projects that you care about. Last year, even during a pandemic, hundreds of thousands of donors like you gave more than $440 million. Your generosity allowed the foundation to fund more than 2,000 global grants, creating opportunities for people everywhere to respond to their community's unique needs. A $15 donation could buy polio vaccines. A water filter cost only $50, and $100 could provide COVID-19 training. You supported causes such as fighting disease, building strong communities, and promoting lasting peace. So whether you gave $1 or $1 million, you gave help and hope. The people whose lives you've touched, the families, the parents, the children, thank you. And so do we. Raindrops fall from the...
There we go. I just really love that video that we received back in July. It just really says a lot, especially thank you. We couldn't do all of this without all of you. So let's dive into the foundation. Some of you I know on the call probably could do this presentation in my stead. And so this is probably going to be a review or maybe a refresher, and maybe it's brand new to you. So let's look at the 3 different funds that make up the Rotary Foundation. Think of it as a 3-legged stool, because we need each one to be equally represented when it comes to the Rotary Foundation. So of course we have the Polio Plus Fund, which is our #1 priority to eradicate polio. We have the annual fund, which you heard a lot about annual fund share. There's some other parts to annual fund, but that's the one that we focus on a lot, especially as clubs and districts. And then also the endowment fund. It's really that long-term sustainability. It's what's going to help provide supplemental funds to what's raised every year that comes off of the endowment. And we'll talk about each one a little bit in depth now. I thought I would start with polio, as it is our #1 priority. And we are part of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, or GPEI, as you hear. There's lots of acronyms in Rotary. And I put this caption at the top, the largest health footprint in the world, because I was on a call one day where our director of polio, Carol Pandek, said this. And I thought, wow, that's really something to think about, that Rotary is part of this huge footprint that is working to eradicate polio. And by the way, it has worked really hard in the past 2 years, this same infrastructure to fight COVID. And it's been very, very successful at working on that as well. But these are our 6 partners. We don't do this work alone. We rely on these 6 partners to work hand in hand to eradicate polio. Some of the milestones that I think are worth repeating that you may have heard already, but just think 19 million people are walking because of your efforts, because of the polio, the money that you've raised to eradicate polio. 122 countries have received support for this. Rotary and Rotarians have invested over 2.2 billion in global polio eradication efforts. In this past year, the GPEI that we just talked about brought out their latest strategy. And really the ultimate goal by 2026 is to eradicate polio completely. It's a pretty bodacious goal, but it's one that they have really thought through well. And I challenge you, go out there to their website and look at the strategy to see all the different pillars and the things that they are using to get there. Also go out to that website as well, or the In Polio Now, if you're ever looking for materials to feature or talk about in your club meetings, because there's tons of information out there that you can use. We are down to the last 2 countries you may have heard when it comes to polio, which is Afghanistan and Pakistan. Two very difficult countries, as many of you know. I kind of think of the analogy, and especially because we're coming up on the Super Bowl, if you're a football fan, but we're on that 1-yard line, right? We're down to the end, and we've got the biggest linebackers on the defense, and that we're trying to get around or work with. And so that's really where we're at. We're to these last 2 countries. Last year, we count polio cases by the calendar year, not the Rotary year. And so in 2021, we only had a total of 5 cases, 4 in Afghanistan and 1 in Pakistan. Pakistan's anniversary of a year without a case is not verified yet. And so that's why you haven't seen it. But that date has passed. And so we're waiting to see if that's going to hold. Because it was in January. So we'll see. If it did, you'll see that very soon come out, but they have to obviously verify that. It takes time. But a country cannot be certified polio free until they've gone 3 years without a case. So you can see that it's a pretty tight timeline right now where we're at to eradicate it by 2026. And a lot of people have asked me lately, well, what's going on in Afghanistan because of all the changes that happened back in August? And I'm going to read a couple things off a sheet of paper here so that I don't get them wrong, because I just got them in today. Rotary International's Polio Committee has been working in Afghanistan. We actually have a Rotarian there who is on the Afghanistan National Polio Plus Committee. And so he's working closely with the World Health Organization and UNICEF. And we are continuing immunizations there. The Taliban is cooperating. They want to end polio in Afghanistan. And for example, in November, there was the first nationwide campaign was held since the government change, and it immunized over 10 million children. Just think about that, 10 million. And then a second one was conducted in December. And in December, through those activities, they reached about 2.6 million children, of about 3 million they think have never, ever been reached before. And then they have another one that was held in late January, but I don't have a statistic on that. So they are still continuing to work there to eradicate polio in Afghanistan. It's not easy, but we are very grateful that despite this change, that our work can continue. How are we going to do this? It takes an army, and as you can see, these are really big numbers. Immunizing more than 450 million children in 60 countries each year. Does anybody know how many children we have in the United States? Anybody? No? We have about 73 million children in the United States. So just think, how, if you're a mathematician, how many times are we going to have to reach all of our children in the United States to reach this number of how many that we're immunizing in all these different countries? It's something to think about, kind of like what we're doing right now in our country with immunizations and COVID. We also have, as you can see, over 150,000 workers in all of these countries that are working, and it can be very dangerous work. We have lost polio workers to violence. It's not an easy job going house to house and doing this work. And one of the other things that's really important that's we've been seeing done in COVID is disease environmental surveillance. It's really important to be checking the water and the sewage to see what's going on. And that's really one of our first lines of defense, where we can see if polio is showing up in those areas. And we realize, okay, we've really got to step up the immunizations in that area of that country. So these are the ways that we are going to achieve polio eradication. And lastly, on polio, I just wanted to point this out as something that you can use as a club president as you're doing your polio fundraising. You probably know this, but we have a terrific match from the Gates Foundation. It's a 2-to-1 match that, for instance, as you see in the blue circle, if you give $25, you get the Gates match, which is $50. It turns your gift into $75. So it's an amazing way to really increase the impact that Rotarians can have in this fight against polio. Now, I will say that with the Gates Foundation match, we do have to raise $50 million every year to get the match. Since 2016, when this began, we have reached that goal every single year. And this current relationship we have with the Gates Foundation does expire in 2023, but I can tell you that there are negotiations ongoing right now to extend that match until we can eradicate polio. So this is really a great way, whether you're working with Rotarians or non-Rotarians in any of your fundraising efforts. This is a great thing because people love a match because they love the power of it, of how much further that their donation can go. So I'll take just a second here. Does anyone have any questions? I'm just checking the time on polio before we go on. And I can't see any raised hands. So if you, because of the way my screens are set up, I can't see your faces right now. So if you have a question, please feel free to unmute and just ask me your question. All right, hearing none, we'll keep moving and move on to annual fund. So like we talked, we have those 3 legs of the stool. We've talked about polio, and now we're going to talk about annual fund. Really, I think it's one that you'll always hear a lot about, annual fund share. And why? Because it is the primary source really for funding Rotary grants, such as district grants, global grants, all the programs and things that happen at the district level. This is a way to fund that. You'll hear that contributions, and I'm going to explain it just a little bit more in the next slide, that annual fund share generate district designated funds, or DDF. See, there's those acronyms again to look at. And I think District 7610 actually has these acronyms listed on the website, kind of a cheat sheet if you don't have it yet. But this is a terrific way that the district gets money that comes back in to help with things that are local. And as with any gift that you give, whether it's polio or annual fund or any of the other things that we have with the Rotary Foundation, of course, the contributions are credited to you as the donor. They are credited to the donors club. And if appropriate and applicable, they are to the club's goal. It just depends on the club's goals that you have listed in the system. So it just kind of depends on that. But this is, like I said, one of the main primary sources of funding all the things that are done today. So let's look at the donations to annual fund share. How does that work? It's really a very unique funding model. I've not seen it anywhere else. And it also is one that I've really never seen, where when a donor gives a gift, that gift can come back and they have somewhat of a say on how that money is used. So for instance, for annual fund share, let's say you give $100 to annual fund share. It goes into investment for 3 years. The earnings off of that help to support foundation operations. At the end of that 3 years, the money, that $100 comes back out, and then it is split and it goes to World Fund, which is managed by the trustees. They decide how the World Fund is used. It's the location where the global grants matches. If you've done a global grant, That's where that money is coming from, is World Fund. Also, many other different programs such as Polio, the Peace Centers, they have the discretion to use that. For instance, in 2020, they moved about 3 million of World Fund to the Disaster Response Fund. That way, Rotarians had money right away to do those district grants for the disaster relief for COVID. So there's different things that happen with World Fund. And when you think about it, sometimes districts, even though some of it's split and goes to World Fund, are still receiving money from World Fund because of their global grants. And then the other side that's the most important to districts is that DDF, or district designated funds. The district, that money comes into the district and they use a portion of it for district grants. They use another portion they can for things like global grants, polio, scholarships, the peace centers. They can decide how that money is used. And so it's really an important thing to think about when you think about giving to annual fund, then it's going to come back. And, you know, the more you give to annual fund share, the more that can come back to the district, the more that can possibly go for your district grants, the more you can do in your communities. So it's really a terrific way to help out your local organizations when you are doing all of your planning for your district grants. Additionally, when it comes to annual fund, you have to think about our Rotary areas of focus, and we have 7 different areas of focus. You can see our newest one is the environment. We used to have 6, but starting on July 1st, we increased it by 1 to the environment. And there are many different ways that you can support these. One of the things I always like to talk about to the areas of focus is if you were to put polio right in the middle of them, it touches all of them. Really, polio just in all these different areas is related to our areas of focus. Lastly, for this section, just talk about if your Rotarians say, well, you know what, I want to give a gift to Annual Fund Share. How do I do that? How can I, and what's the easiest way I can give a gift to Annual Fund Share? And for me, I would say online. Go to rotary.org and you can give a gift right there with a credit card online. You can decide how much. You can decide if it's going to be Annual Fund Share, if it's going to be polio or an area of focus. It's completely up to you what you would like to give to. You can also sign up for Rotary Direct. I have Rotary Direct. I'm a Paul Harris Society member. It works great because I can sign up for it. I can decide on the designation. It goes every month by credit card. I don't worry about it. I don't have to think about it. And the nice thing about Rotary Direct is you can decide. The minimum is $10 a month, but you can decide how much. You can do it monthly, you can do it yearly, you can do it quarterly. It's completely up to you. You can change the designation. It's something that works really well if you want to do that type of ongoing giving. Some things that people don't think about sometimes outside of their checkbook is gifts of stock. The Rotary Foundation does accept gifts of stock. Also, when you reach that certain age, that you can do required minimum distributions from a retirement account. We also do those qualified charitable distributions and even donor advised fund grants as well. So there's many, many different ways to think about giving to the Rotary Foundation. The last one is a pledge. Oftentimes I have Rotarians with what I do as a major gift officer who want to do a pledge of $10,000 or more and perhaps become a major donor. And those pledges are spread over 3 years. And I see a hand raised. Stan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. Very good so far. One of the questions that popped to mind here, going back to the 7 focus areas, is how are the funds distributed among, rather, let me phrase it differently. What is the distribution of funds among those 7 different focus areas? Is there information on that?
That's completely based on gifts, right? So there's not a percentage that goes to a specific area of focus. It's based on the gifts that come in to those areas of focus that from Rotarians or non-Rotarians. So there's not really a percentage split because it's completely dependent upon the designation by the donor.
Well, do we know what that information is?
I don't know if it's available online, like where you can download it, but it's something that I certainly can. I'm writing it down. There is something called there's an area of focus. It's an operations report, and it provides you with the information by area of focus, These areas of focus started in 2014. So it's a report from 14 to 21 that shows you exactly how much money has gone to each one and what type of grants it has supported. So if that's something that you all would be interested in, I can certainly provide that to Sheila to share.
Well, I would certainly be interested in it, but perhaps others as well. Thank you.
I would too. Thank you, Lori. That's
Of course.
great question, Stan.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. And like I said, I see 3 hands raised, but I can't see who they are. So if you want to go ahead and ask your question, go for it.
Okay.
This is Don McMillan. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
How are the district designated funds and the global fund amounts segregated into each of those pots?
Okay. I'm just going to go back to that slide. Okay. So if you do a gift, let's leave it at $100. That's an easy number to work with. Then this is a recent, I'm going to back up because it's a little bit complicated. This is a recent change by the trustees in response to and I'm going to show you a slide later, into the enormous response of global grants. There's been a huge increase in global grants. And the unfortunate part is that gifts to annual fund share have not kept up. So in order to make sure that the most global grants we can fund, then they had to change the funding model. It used to be if you gave $100, $50 went to World Fund, or I'm sorry, $5 came off, $45 went to World Fund, and $50 went to district designated funds. So what they did instead now is it's $47.50 goes to World Fund and $47.50 goes to district designated funds. And the $5 that was coming completely out of World Fund is now split. And so that's the difference. So basically it used to be 50-50. Now it's just a little under 50% for each side. That was the small change that they made in order to keep up with the demand for global grants based on the amount of money that has been coming in for annual fund share.
And the $5 goes for what? And
it
to
goes
where?
for foundation operations, right?
Thought that was the interest.
It is.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, Denny Coons has a question as well.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I'm off mute. Okay. When it gets to the district designated fund, the district then decides how much they're going to use for the global grants versus how much they're going to use for district grants.
So there are some parameters that the Rotary Foundation does give to the district when it comes to this. No more than 50% of the district designated funds that come in can be used for district grants. So you think of it, 50% of what the district receives goes to district grants, and then the other 50% can be used for, like I said, global grants, polio, peace centers, local projects, things like that.
I sort of thought that's what it was, and everybody needs to know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, this would be a good time to take a break if you don't mind.
Okay. All right. Let me
We can
stop.
do our social activity. You all.
All right. So here we go. I need to put that on the screen. How about that? All right. There we go. So we finished up just a little bit with annual fund. And one thing I wanted to share about annual fund really quick was Giving Tuesday. We just got the information today. And many of you participated in Giving Tuesday with the Rotary Foundation. I want to say thank you, because for the very first time, the Rotary Foundation raised over $1 million on Giving Tuesday. So thank you to all of you and your club members and everyone who participated in Giving Tuesday. So part of annual fund, one of the things I think we talked about just a little bit, and I'm not going to go into depth on district grants and global grants because you're going to get more of that in that session. And those will be the experts that are going to talk to you about that, because every district handles their grants differently. But it really is a way to engage your Rotarians in the club, especially through the district grant, because it's local and you're hands-on and you're really doing work. Global grants, you can still get everyone involved, but it's a much larger project and it may or may not be right there in your backyard. But it is a great way to get Rotarians involved. And just a few of the features that make up a district grant is, I said, it's local. It's handled by the district. They have their process of how it's done. It's usually smaller, and it's handled at the district level, and they have all of the information of how that works. But it's the things that you're already doing in your communities, whether it's dictionaries or feeding the homeless or training or whatever it is that your club is doing. That's what the district grant is for, to be awarded locally for your club and district projects. Some of the big features of a global grant is it has to align with one of the areas of focus. It's much larger. It has a budget of $30,000 or more. The applications are all handled online through the Rotary Foundation Grants Department. They have to be sustainable. You have to do things like community needs assessment before you do this, to make sure that the community that you're going to do this with really wants this and it's really going to be beneficial. It also needs a host club in the country where it's happening and an international club. So there's a lot of different things that go into a global grant. Some people like to say it's a district grant on steroids. You could say that in some ways, but it definitely is. There are two different, very different types of grants between district and global. And just to kind of illustrate that a little bit from what we talked about earlier when I gave you the one figure, as in last year in June, for the year 2021, over 300 million went into programs. And so what does that mean? Well, when you look at district grants, global grants, and disaster response grants, here's the breakdown. So you can see what went to all the different districts, and look at the global grant number. And just for comparison, in the year prior, in 1920, we only had about 1,300 global grants for about 95 million. So last year was really, we've used the word unprecedented a lot of times, but the grant, just the explosive growth of global grants throughout the world is a great problem to have, right? It means Rotarians are extremely busy doing great things in all of the countries that you live in. But it means that we want to pay for as many as we can. So you can see how much it rose just in 1 year. So it's the impact that is just incredible that you all are making through these types of grants. So the last section of the foundation I'm going to talk about briefly is the endowment. And, really it is how we are going to have long-term sustainable funding. And I like this picture because it shows apple trees. So you can think of any tree that you want to, but what happens when you give a gift to the Rotary Endowment is you're planting that tree, right? You're planting a tree, and then it is going to be nurtured. It's going to be fed. It's going to receive sunshine and air and everything, so that it's going to grow, so that every year it's going to provide those apples or those spendable earnings, because that is how we fund Rotary projects, just like we do with the annual fund. The difference, like I said, with the endowment, which many of you may be familiar with an endowment, is that gifts are invested forever. So if you give a gift to the Rotary Foundation Endowment, the principal, let's say you give $10,000 and it goes in there, that $10,000 is going to be invested forever. And it's just the spendable earnings that come off every year that are going to be used for how you designate it. So let's say you pick endowment fund share, and which a lot of Rotarians really love to do, to provide their districts with long-term sustainability. So it depends on the Rotarian. Do you want to have long-term impact with your gift, or do you want it spent all at once? And also, the nice thing about the endowment is we have many ways for you to personalize your gift. You can create a named endowment with your gift with the endowment. Just to let you know how Rotarians are doing these type of gifts. They are using, mostly you see at the top, I would say the most popular are naming Rotary, a percentage in their will or living trust, or a beneficiary designation of a retirement plan. There are also other ways you can do that: life insurance, life income agreements, such as charitable remainder trust, charitable gift annuities, and also donor advised funds. People sometimes don't think about a donor advised fund as a planned gift, but they need to have beneficiaries as well to make sure that when you pass away, then the donor advised fund, if there's not a successor, then there is a beneficiary. And so you can designate that for a charity. So there are many different ways to support the endowment. And it's really an important one. I'll tell you that last year, I believe we had about $18 million that came off of the Rotary Endowment that's funding things all over the world, all kinds of global grants. Endowment funds share, the Rotary Peace Centers. The endowment is really an important part of the Rotary Foundation. And that would be a whole program by itself, just to provide information about the different ways that Rotarians can personalize their gift. So before I get into a little bit more club focused of like club goals and some recognition information, are there any questions so far on the endowment? All right. So Sheila talked a little bit about this, so I won't go into it in detail. I realize sometimes you just never know what everybody is going to talk about, but it is important to get your club's goals in there, and to really, as she said, discuss with your foundation chair, with your board, really look at your fundraising and what your goals look like, especially for polio. And some of the reports I put on here that are very helpful when you're looking at that goal setting, you can find all of these when you go into My Rotary, is the Club Recognition Summary, Paul Harris Society Report, Club Foundation Banner Report. How, where were you at with E-Ray, sustaining member, to overall giving, all that kind of stuff, really to watch that. Your fundraising analysis report, look at previous years. What did it look like for your club? All of these different reports can be very helpful when you're setting your foundation goals. And then she's going to send it to you. I just put up here a couple of different ways to go in to find the reports, and then how to upload your goals into Rotary Club Central. So please get out there. You can't hurt anything. I know sometimes that our website can be slow. I know it's frustrating sometimes. They have made a lot of improvements and are working on it. I will say one hint that the tech person said to me is, don't keep hitting it over and over. It sometimes just takes a minute for it to think. And if you keep hitting it, trying to get it to go faster, it's not going to go any faster. But get in there and look around, get comfortable with it, because there's so much information in there that you can use. They've talked a little bit about raising money for annual fund and polio. There's so many different amazing fundraisers out there. I heard, putt putt for polio, pints for polio. There's so many different ways that, especially for polio, that you can raise polio. I think a couple things is, really try to engage all of your club members to the best of your ability. Advocate for our foundation during club meetings. It doesn't have to be a whole program all the time. Even if it's a foundation minute, just to give, like I said, go out to the polio website and pull something, or show a short video. I'm going to show you a couple of resources for that. I don't know if any of you have used the Raise for Rotary. It is a new online, it's about a year old. It's an online fundraising platform. And if you know Facebook, you know how that platform works, of that type of fundraising. Raise for Rotary, you can use for any type. Let's say I know people that use it for their birthday fundraiser, or you can use it for a polio fundraiser. The kind of cool thing about it is, if you use Raise for Rotary and people give through it, especially Rotarians, if you use the email that you use for Rotary, you'll get your donation will automatically be credited to your donor record, which is really awesome, because we can't do that with Facebook. So it's one thing to think about when you are using the Raise for Rotary platform, and you can invite anybody with the links for it. Anyone can give to it. And so it's really a great tool to use for your fundraising. And as Sandy said, celebrate your success and make sure you thank everyone. It's so important to say thank you. In my job, there's nothing more important to me than thanking our donors for everything they do, not just their financial gifts, but for their time and their talents as well. And then also, I hope that you will consider thinking about leading by example. There's nothing more powerful than when you say, will you join me? Will you join me in a gift to Annual Fund Share? Will you join me in supporting polio? There's just nothing more powerful than peer-to-peer fundraising. And just, I hope that you will consider that during your year as club president. As they said, there's tons of resources out there. Look at the District 7610. You have so many people just on the foundation team alone that can help you answer questions, find things, speak to your clubs, give you information, ideas, use them, call them, email them, text them, whatever it is that you need to do to get information. And then also we are part of Zone 33. So you not only have your district team, but you have a zone team for the Rotary Foundation. As Sandy shared, Juanita Colley is on the call tonight. She is an assistant Rotary Regional Foundation chair. Send her an email and ask her a question if you have it. But all these people are here to help you when it comes to the foundation. And then also I wanted to talk about your resources that you can find. You've got the Rotary Support Center. I hope you call them or email them. They are terrific. And if they don't know the answer, they're going to put you in touch with whoever can do that. Do you need videos for your clubs? Go out to Rotary Videos on Vimeo or YouTube. There are dedicated channels just to Rotary that you can download those videos. My Rotary, we've talked about that. The Rotary Learning Center, go out there and take those free online, on-demand classes at any time. Tell your club members to take it if they have a question about the foundation or anything Rotary related. They just redid a lot of these classes, so take advantage of this free training. And they gave you the Rotary Foundation reference guide. I call it my Bible for the Rotary Foundation. Understanding Foundation Recognition Points is a great document. The annual report, go out there and Google the Rotary Foundation annual report. There's so much information in there showing, the financial questions. How is the money used? Where does it go? The impact, all that kind of stuff is out there on there. The multi-donor form, get used to using that, or your foundation chair will. That's an important form to make sure that if you are sending in group donations to the Rotary Foundation, so that every donor gets credit for their gift. And then Rotary Direct, I talked a little bit about that. That's a great document too of FAQs for that. On staff, you may or may not know, you have an annual giving officer. That's Brian Holscher. And then myself, major gift officer, I'm also on staff as well. And we're here to help you anytime that you need help. Now, I slipped this slide in right when we were talking earlier because I heard just a little bit of the discussion about this. And there's always a discussion about Paul Harris Fellow versus Paul Harris Society. I wasn't going to talk about it tonight, but I'll just do it really quickly. It's so easy to get it confused because the names are so close. And it's named after, of course, our founder. And really the biggest difference really to look at is Paul Harris Fellow can be a combination of points and dollars, whereas Paul Harris Society is strictly your cash contributions to the Rotary Foundation. So with Paul Harris Fellow, each dollar you give for annual fund, polio, or global grants earns you 1 point. So it's 1-to-1. It's not for the endowment. That was a decision by the trustees. So people sometimes say, well, I gave a gift to the endowment and I didn't get any points. And that's because you only receive points when you give to annual fund, polio, or an approved global grant. And then you can use those points for many different things, as they were talking about. You can do a match. You can give an award to a firefighter, an educator. You can use those points in many different ways. And there are many different matching things. The district did one back in November. So you use those points as recognition, but they don't count toward, if you receive, your points don't count for when you are getting up to the major donor level. When you get to use Paul Harris Society, and when you go up to the major donor level, which is at $10,000 or more, that's strictly outright giving. You can't use points to move yourself up to get toward major donor. So that's some of the down and dirty of the difference between those two. And you'll have a lot of questions. Get that Paul Harris Fellow points FAQ, because it's very, very helpful at providing a lot of answers to the questions that people will have when it comes to that. Okay, so I know we're getting there on time. I'm watching my watch. Club recognition, which we do have coming up this Sunday, the 6th at 3 o'clock. We are going to do a session to recognize all the wonderful work and gifts for clubs in the District 7610. And so here are some of the club recognition that will be given, which the first one is 100% Foundation Giving Club. And so you can see that means achieve an average of $100 per capita giving and 100% participation, with every dues paying member contributing at least $25. And you can see that those are to Annual Fund, Polio, an approved global grant, or the Endowment Fund, in this case, for 100% foundation giving. For 100% every Rotarian every year, you can see there are two main differences, but really the big difference is that it's only counts for giving toward Annual Fund during the year. So that's important also to notice those differences when you're looking at those, if your club wants to achieve those recognition levels. This district also does the top 3 per capita clubs in Annual Fund giving. And so they will announce those this Sunday. Also, other things that your club can strive for are the 100% Paul Harris Fellow Club. This is a one-time award, but this is when every member in your club is a Paul Harris Fellow. We also have the 100% Paul Harris Society Club. That's when every member in your club has contributed a minimum of $1,000 to Annual Fund, Polio, or a global grant. And then the last one, which is a fairly new one within the last 2 years, less than 2 years, I believe, is the 100% Rotary's Promise Club. And this is when every member in your club either has already given $1,000 or more to the endowment, or they have notified the Rotary Foundation that they have planned to leave a gift in their estate plan of $1,000 or more. So these are the different ways that your club can receive recognition for their wonderful work with the foundation. And so lastly, I just wanted to put up, this is your theme. Jennifer Jones just announced her theme about 2 weeks ago. It's Imagine Rotary. And I put this quote up here because I think it's apropos, especially for all the work that you're getting ready to do, is you don't imagine yesterday, you imagine tomorrow. And so all the amazing work that you're going to do as you take on club president, this is your, I think it's a great theme because you can imagine anything and you can achieve anything as Rotarians in all the work that you're going to do. So I am going to stop my screen share and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have on the Rotary Foundation. If you think of them tomorrow or later tonight, I'm going to put my email in the chat. You are welcome to reach out to me with a question if you get one, but let me do that really quick.
Lori, we do have one question in the chat already. Can grant money, district grant money, Don, can you ask your question? I'm trying to read it here.
I'll try to remember it. Can district grant money be used for non-local projects like globally?
Yes. Yes, it can.
Because you said local when you did the discussion.
Right. And someone else can correct me. Like I said, I'm not the subject matter expert when it comes to this, but yes, I know that Rotary clubs do use it for international work. I would just say most of the time it is for local work, but there are times when they use it for international work.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Lori's presentation will be sent out. Kaz, you have a copy of it, correct?
I don't know if you have I don't know if he does or not. What I'll probably have to do is take the video out. Otherwise it will be really large. But a lot of the slides, especially toward the end, all the resources are hyperlinks. So you can click on them and get to those documents.
Can you ship it to me, Lori, please?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then we'll get it sent out for everybody, and it'll be put on the training resource library as well on the Rotary website. Okay,
Yeah. And
any
there's
other questions?
the only one I see that came into me was, are there special rules for raffles? I do not know. Sometimes that even comes down to the state level as to what you can do with raffles.
Yeah,
Lori?
the state of Virginia is very specific depending on what your raffle is for.
Yep.
We could sit here for 3 hours talking about the car that the Bailey's Crossroads Club raffles off and what they had to go through with the IRS in the state of Virginia. So that is a very specific question that your club would have to deal with case by case.
I think the reference to the Virginia state law is to the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember that correctly.
Well, thank you, Don. Okay.
All right. Well,
Seeing,
the only thing I was going
seeing
to say
no
is,
other hands or questions?
Excuse me, excuse me, I
Oh.
asked about the raffles question because we wanted to do an annual raffle for Polio Plus. And I did not know if I had to have something special if we were designating it for Polio Plus each year.
What are you raffling off?
We get donations from local individuals.
Oh, okay. So they're not getting a gift or something for donating the money. You're just going to do a fundraiser for Polio Plus specifically.
Yes. All of the money
Okay.
raised from the raffle, we did this once, and the money raised from the raffle we gave to Polio Plus.
Okay. And that is certainly allowable because you're not giving anything away and you're just requesting money. You're asking for funds, asking for money.
Yes.
Okay. I think you're fine, Elizabeth, but we can talk about it further just to make sure. Okay.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Jim, did you have a question? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I just, you were talking about Bailey's Crossroads. You're right, it's very complicated, but the main thing is how much money.
Right.
That's where the key is. And over a certain threshold, you have to apply for a license like we do with the Mustang. So even a 50-50 you have at a club has to be of a concern.
One
It has to
additional
be
thing,
it has to be below a certain level.
and
Do you
Sheila,
know
if
the
you're,
level?
No. We're debating, that's what she said. We're looking at that at Bailey's right now. And we've actually stopped our 50-50 as a result of that.
if you're
Okay.
advertising this raffle, in other words, looking for participants outside the state, each state, including the District of Puerto Rico, have their own rules, and you have to comply with
correct.
all of those rules.
Yes. For example, we're not allowed to have our raffle drawing outside of Virginia and Maryland, for example. You're correct.
Okay. Wow. I hadn't even thought of that. Thank you, Don. That's really important.
Well, especially if you get into trouble with one of the states in question.
Oh, yes.